This episode of the bonus round brought to you by Hyundai. We're joined by Garnet Lee of Shack News, Andrea Renee from The Escapist, and Alex Albrecht to discuss bringing games into the next generation. Will superior graphics lead the way, or is there something more on the horizon? You won't want to miss this episode of the bonus round. We're back here on the bonus round from the WP24 restaurant at LA Live, counting down to E3. We're just a couple weeks away, and I'm here with Garnet Lee, Andrea Renee, and Alex Albrecht. This week, we're not talking about one company specifically. We're getting into the idea of what makes a next-generation game. And this is, I think, a big question that a lot of us have been thinking about this year, because last time we had this leap from standard definition graphics to high-definition graphics. We've seen PlayStation 4, we've seen Xbox One, we've seen PC games. Games look better, but I think that the leap is less pronounced, at least from a visual perspective,
for sure,
than we've seen in past generations. So, Garnet, let's start with you. I mean, what makes a next-gen game? Have you seen a next-gen game that you're really excited about yet?
This is one of those cases where I love being a gamer, and I don't want to sound cynical, so I turn around and say, there are parts of these games that I think look fantastic. While it was drab, Killzone showed me a ton of things that there are no way you could do on a current system. But yet at the same time, it still very much looked like a current-gen game turned into a much more badass current-gen game. And I think that, so some of the things you ask about, the visual fidelity leap is really hard to get across. Even during the Microsoft One conference where they're showing, here's old Call of Duty, here's new Call of Duty. Yeah, you can get
Pretty similar, though, right?
But at the same time, as long as you're on a 1080p screen and getting a 1080p feed, then you're getting down to like special effects and how detailed models are and those sort of things.
Volumetric shading, and you're like, what does that even mean to me as a gamer?
You have to sell people on the subtleties and how much better they are.
But maybe you can't sell them on the subtleties. And I think once we get past the first generation of next generation games, then we'll start to see what designers do with the extra horsepower, because it starts to get into things like, where Naughty Dog pushed the PlayStation 3 era of performance capture. And how much that made a real change in the game. So what's the next evolution of that? How much more naturally can we get, anything, whether it be a human or a dog, to animate in a game and be believable and realistic? And then next step, how much more realistic can we get our interactions with them? Where, when we have a character and they're interacting with someone who's supposed to be a love interest or an antagonist, you actually get some of the dramatic tension that comes across when you're watching a good movie.
No, I think it'll be interesting. The thing that I feel like is that maybe a game like Destiny or something like that will innovate in that how you play, right? And it's less about the visuals, but it's just sort of the experience. And I think we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that game yet in many ways because we haven't gone deep enough with any demos of next-gen games to really see how the physics and how the
They've talked a little bit about it. Like in the Xbox One, they talked about how they're going from 30,000 servers to 300,000 servers, and that you're going to have these now
offload things to the cloud.
Persistent worlds. That's an interesting thing. I'm a huge MMO player. I mean, that's like my joint. And, one of the things that I love about MMOs isn't just that I can have a conversation with another person, even though it's via chat. It's that it just feels cool to see somebody run by. Yeah. It just feels cool. It just makes you feel like you're playing out in a playground rather than I'm sitting in a dark cave eating Cheetos and feeling sorry for myself. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a little layer. But when we start talking about, like, Destiny's a great example, like when you start talking about what happens when the other players playing the game exist in your game, you don't even need to interact. I mean, think about Journey, you know what I mean? Like, it was such an amazing experience because it was just another person. You had no need to communicate with them. It gave you this sense of that. And to be able to have something like that on a bigger scale, that is very interesting stuff. And that's where you get into, what just above graphics, what else can you do to make a game next gen? You know what I mean? Seeing people experiencing the game in the distance as you're experiencing a game, going over and doing something that will help a person or hinder a person in a very, benign, not very teabaggy way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
but we're not going to see
ideas.
that for a while, I don't think, because every developer that I've talked to that has games coming out on current gen and next gen, because let's face it, they can't ignore current gen install base right now, has said the only thing that's going to be different for these games is some of these bells and whistles in the animations and some of the effects because they don't want the current gen install base to feel like they're not getting the same gaming experience on their Xbox 360 or their PS3. So I really don't think we're going to see some of these really amazing leaps forward in next gen for another year at least. I mean, look how far the current generation has come from when Xbox 360 first launched to what like Halo 4 was doing with the animation in that game, or the way The Last of Us looks. So
no, it's a great point because I
think,
as you said, you look at Assassins, you even look at Destiny, you look at Call of Duty. I mean, these are games that are going to sell way more units probably on the current systems than the next gen system. So Call of Duty, when they showed it at Microsoft, I think a lot of people were like, well, it doesn't look that massive leap forward. It's like, well, it's gonna be better on Xbox One, but yeah, most of the sales are probably going to be on 360, and they have to make a game that's still going to work for 360 because you can't afford to make two separate games.
Yeah, and the CryEngine guys came out and were like, oh yeah, the CryEngine 3 runs on the next gen consoles.
Right.
Okay, yeah, it runs on my PC too, like today. You know what I mean? So there is that little bit of there has to be something just outside fidelity because again, like you said, going from standard def to 1080p, that was the big jump. 1080p to 1080p is not that big of a jump, even though, yeah, you're going to get, smoother surfaces and a higher pixel count, or not higher pixel count, but like, higher resolution skinning for models and stuff like that, and adaptive stuff that they talked about in Call of Duty 4, Ghosts. Yep.
I don't think the average
you
gamer
get closer
cares
and
about that though. Do you? I mean, like if you think about
not the average gamer.
Well, I mean, the guy who's buying Call of Duty, like the Call of Duty person, do you think that they care that the scope of their gun is perfectly
No, I think
round?
it's all about, as Kyle Bosman would say, it's all about the experience of playing these games and sort of like what that feels like when you kind of step in there. So no, I don't think people notice that, but maybe it makes it a little more realistic or a little little crisper for you. It's not like you don't want that, but yeah, what is I guess the big question a lot of gamers I think will have this fall is like, hey, I could play Ghosts on my 360. Why do I want to make the leap to the next system? And I think this is the first generation in a long time that I can remember where that leap, I think you have to think about what that leap is. And it's like, well, do I wait a year?
Well,
do
but
I
also,
not buy it this year?
we don't even know how much these things are going to cost.
Or as it's been reported, maybe Xbox will have a cell phone model with subsidies where you could get Xbox One for like $299, but you have to agree to subscribe to Xbox Live. That could change a lot.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, I've been subscribing to Xbox Live. Please lower the cost of the console. I want to buy all your games.
Okay, guys, hold that thought. We'll be right back from here at WP24 at LA Live.